Welcome in, everyone. Hello, hello, hello there. Thank you all for being with us today. Welcome. And if you came to us for part one yesterday with the lovely Lily Milliner, that is a welcome back to you. So what's going to happen right now is that I'm going to go over a few things, as well as let these people have the floor, and you can hear this wealth of information coming from these gems, of which you probably won't get to hear this unless you pay them. So, let's take advantage of this. So first off, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. It's part two of our webinar series called HUBZone in the Hot Seat. And with our webinar host topic speaker, Lily Milliner, founder and president of Build It Up. Today is part two called Lounging with Lily, the reality of HUBZone and business success stories. My name is Kamalia Blunt, and I am the program coordinator of HBCU's Morgan State University's Entrepreneurial Development and Assistance Center. Sorry, the DMV has so many acronyms, it's hard for me to keep up sometimes, so stay with me. And wait, there's more. I will also be the facilitator of the chat. And I will be interacting with you all as the event goes on, as we're listening to all these amazing stories. I'm also essentially the webinar bouncer, but we're not going to get into that as well. Okay, so if I'll be in the background if you need anything. Now, before I give Lily the virtual floor, allow for me to give you a few housekeeping items that we posted in the chat as well. The slide deck to today's presentation, it'll be short, it'll just be a speech, but this one as well will be included after this webinar, as well as this recording. It will be ready within 1 to 2 weeks. Can't speak today. It must be the lunch hour. It'll be ready within 1 to 2 weeks on the EDAC Morgan website, and you will all be notified when that does occur, so that way you can have this content fresh. If you have any questions or follow-up concerns, I will provide Lily's follow-up email in the chat, so that way you can contact her directly if you have any forward conversations, as well as whatever types of attachments that the other speakers will have. Those will also be delivered to you as well. Now, with respect to the speakers, unless you have a question, please mute yourself so that way we can give them the floor, and that way there's no background noise that will distract from the presentation. Other than that, if you have a question, please put it in the chat and we'll answer it as we go. So there's no Q&A at the end. This is a dynamic conversation. Please feel free to hop off mute, contact Lily as far as addressing the different person that you would like to ask your question. And then from there, we can just have this robust conversation about what HUBZone really means and how it can impact you and your business, because that's why you're here. You're already bosses. We're just taking you to another level with a certification and an opportunity that maybe can fit your business. And if it does, boom, we can help you get there. All right. Other than that, I will give Lily the floor and let's call it.
I am so excited. Thank you, Ms. Blunt, for just allowing us to have this opportunity to talk about the rigor, the determination. Several of these HUBZone businesses have been out there. They're champions of the community, champions of helping other small businesses. One of the things that's exciting about this is whether you're a HUBZone business or just a small business or a prime business, you'll find out so many tips and tools and vision that my illustrious speakers have. The setup for this will be, the beginning of this will have each of my presenters, my Lounging with Lily folks, they're going to talk about their company for about 5 minutes. They'll tell you their journey, and it's got to be short, the elevator speech, they're used to it. And they're going to talk about where they've been, where they're going, and why they love, I call it business community activism. So I'm going to start out with a friend of mine, Sam, who has an engagement at 1 o'clock, but he was so committed to this that he's squeezing us in. This is the kind of commitment we see from folks that have been in the HUBZone program. And Stephanie, one of his illustrious, I'll call it powerhouses in the company, will take over to answer questions, but he has made it his job to be a champion of small businesses across the nation and across the world. So Sam, I'm gonna let you tell your story in 5 to 7 minutes or less. Yes.
It started with an idea of being an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be my own boss, build my own little hut, right? Rather than building somebody else's empire. And from that idea, from that thought, RELI was born. We do value partnership very deeply. We couldn't come on our own. I mean, it's really credit goes to the good partnership that we have built around all the other contractors in the discipline. People makes the company, and I was always looking for good people to come with me that has the same vision, same philosophy of life and work. Because every contract that we have, every project that we have, it is actually touching lives in real life, whether it's a Medicare population or whether it's people taking a plane or a train and going somewhere, right? The work that we do ends up serving the citizens of this country. We certainly want to be one of the top, contractor in the Beltway, and from servicing our customers, still continuing to focus on serving the citizens of this country and touching lives.
I think you're setting me up perfectly here to tell the story, Lily, which is Sam is an entrepreneur, a small business partner, thought leader, I think, through and through. And so about 10 years ago, after working with the federal government, Sam decided that he wanted to have a bigger role in making an impact in the nation, really. And so he set up RELI Group, which is a management consulting firm that supports the federal government. Most of the work that you see in RELI represents the healthcare and technology space, health and human services, but then also some work at Homeland Security as well. So for 10 years, Sam has been building a legacy of making an impact, and we have grown from a small business. You might have heard in the clips and cuts there that we have grown out of a small business, but still maintain a lot of our work with HUBZone, 8A under certain contract vehicles. And I think what's important for this group to know is that Sam is a generous sharer, and I often hear him talk about his desire for supporting small businesses in the path that he traveled as well, pointing out some of the mistakes and lessons that he learned. And I don't know if any of you with a nod or a show of hands or a chat or a reaction here can relate to wanting to have a roadmap as a small business and missing some of the potholes that you can miss along the way. And so Sam has willingly shared a lot of that with the small business community. And from that, he created WinHub, which is what brings me here today under his family of brands. What WinHub does is we're an operational service provider for small businesses that are looking to work with the federal government, whether that's just getting started, or perhaps you already have some work with the federal government and are looking to increase that. And again, if you're a small business owner here, maybe I'm speaking your language, singing your tune when I say you wear 1,000 different hats. Some of those are hats that you like wearing, that you look good in, and others are hats that you would like to throw in the back of your closet and never see again. And so ideally what we do is we take some of those hats off of you and can support you with HR, finance and accounting, marketing and communications, and a number of operational support areas. So excited to be here. Happy to answer questions that you have.
And Stephanie, thank you for that, because one reason why I wanted Sam here is because, as most of the people were able to hear, in business for 10 years, and in the last year, maxed out a small business because of the lessons learned along the way. WinHub is about allowing people to,
I guess, right?
But let me just, if you guys have an NDA, we have to sign it. Well, I can send you a template here.
Okay, I think Sam was trying again and it was breaking up. But one of the important things and why I love RELI Group's story is because the amount of community activism it does, from working with veterans across the Baltimore community. It's not only at Christmas time do they jump in, but they feed the hungry, they do all kinds of training and everything else. So they've been able to take, I call it the money that they've been able to, that profit, and put it directly into the Baltimore community. And to me, their success has been not only helping other small businesses build their infrastructure, proposal development, accounting systems, and everything else, but also in their direct giving back to the veteran communities within the Washington, Baltimore area. I'd like to, at this point, introduce Vanessa, who is down there in Florida.
Well, we're lucky. Thank you so much, Lily, for having me. I'm so grateful and so honored. And so far, no jets in the vicinity. So if you hear my voice get drowned out, and I'm a pretty loud speaker, but if you hear my voice get drowned out, bear with me here as our little airplane circles. So thank you for having me. Indeed, I am here as the president and co-founder of Two Lions Aerospace LLC. And what we do is very simple. We buy spare airplane aviation components, spare parts, hard to find obsolete parts for both commercial and government aircrafts. So the exciting part about selling to the government is all of a sudden we were buying parts for weapon systems, huge aircraft carriers like F-16s, F-18s, B-52s, C-130s. And you hear me roll these out, you know, comfortably today, but I can tell you that 3.5, 4 years ago, that was not me. My journey in this world, and you know, I can't even begin this talk without mentioning my better half. The reason our company is called Two Lions Aerospace is precisely because my husband and I, Mike, are both Leos, and we personify that. We are go-getter, you know, stubborn, very driven individuals, and we are two lions. And we started companies called Two Lions some years ago, 10 years ago. Now, I should preface this by saying that the aviation world was completely new to me. My husband started this business 10 years ago as a hobby, if you will, because he's an airline pilot by trade. And he wanted to sell commercial parts to you know, other communities, foreign communities. We were selling to Africa and Asia and Europe and that sort of thing. And when COVID hit, my history is sales, and I was actually an event planner for 11 years. I was an event and travel agent, and I did weddings and parties and galas, and that was my world. I had left finance and veered into that, and I had owned my own business for 11 years. So I had a lot of corporate experience, a lot of sales experience, but nothing aviation related. And when COVID hit, my visionary husband that he is said to me, hey, your events are dead for a little bit. Why don't you come and help me set up government? And I have to give kudos here because he pivoted. This is so important in business, learning when to pivot. Immediately our business ceased because guess what? Nobody was flying during COVID, right? So all of our commercial airlines that we were supplying parts to had ceased operating. And my husband had been looking into other things because that's who he is. He's the visionary in our partnership. And he said, hey, I think we should start doing the same thing, but let's do it with the US military. I was terrified. I was like, I can't do this. And, you know, he said, yes, you can, you know, come on. And I remember one day about 6 months into it when things were really rough. And I said, if I had been walking down the street, would you have hired me to run your business? Is this really, would you have come to me? Was I really the person best suited for this? And he looked at me and he said, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And so after I got over all my fears and jumped right in, again, visionary that he is, he realized we needed to get HUBZoned. And I didn't know anything about the HUBZone, but he did the paperwork up front. And then all of a sudden we were off on our way. And I should tell you, Lily, very quickly, just before this call, I decided to look at our stats. And we're currently women owned because I'm here literally 60 hours a week. And so we decided to add HUBZone. We decided to add women owned to our HUBZone set aside. And I looked at our contracts, and we are literally at a 60-40% split of all of our contracts. So we've gotten about 650 contracts from DLA in the last 3 years. And of those 650, 135 are HUBZone and 172 are women owned. So it works. That's my spiel.
Vanessa, just before we opened up, I asked Vanessa what that sign said. It wasn't very, you know, I was trying to read it on the screen, and I said, everything is possible. She said, no, everything is figure outable. And what you've heard in this story is that she was an event planner and pivot into an area that was totally different. But guess what? When you believe you can figure things out, You start learning the acronyms. You start engaging people. That rigor takes place. The same rigor in order to plan those events and make sure those weddings went off on time and everything else is that same type of rigor that the individuals that are on this line bring to any engagement, and you can do the same. I'd love Shereena to share her story, and I'm getting all excited. What can I say?
Hello, everyone. Thank you again, Ms. Lily, for giving me this opportunity. Like she said, my name is Shereena Johnson. I am the Vice President of Education and Training for the H.A.B.I.T.S Group. The H.A.B.I.T.S Group stands for Healing and Assisting Bridging Individuals that Serve and Need Service. I could say that my story is a little bit like Ms. Vanessa here. My husband started this company in 2015 as a veteran. Shout out to my whole team that is here on this call right now. They are such a great support system. And he, as a veteran himself, wanted to give back. He wanted to give back, give back, give back. And he couldn't figure out, like, his background is construction. And he was like, well, what if I give veterans the opportunity to get some construction training? And then, you know, we help them find jobs. I'm an educator by trade. I've been in the education system for over 15 years, started in childcare, worked my way up. And he was like, Shereena, I think you would be really good for this. I can tell everybody here, I was very hesitant. One, to kind of be entrepreneurship, as everybody that's on this call, entrepreneurship takes guts. Entrepreneurship takes a lot of faith in jumping off cliffs and knowing that there's going to be something at the end of the day. However, COVID happened. And it was like, you're not at work anymore. Why don't you help really build this up? And so I got into the education and training component. We work with individuals in HUBZone communities, the homeless community, recently incarcerated individuals, veterans, indigenous communities, and we provide training to them. Right now, we're focusing mainly on construction training, as in we are based out of Texas. So right now with the infrastructure bill, getting roads and streets built, we do a rapid training. We provide them with their OSHA 10 card, their CPR first aid. We provide them with heavy highway equipment training, and then we help them line them up for jobs. We recently won a contract with the city of Austin to provide jobs to these individuals doing homeless encampment cleanup. And so for myself as the teacher of these individuals, it was great to see some of them show up and be leaders and become supervisors. And so with the H.A.B.I.T.S Group, we are just trying to truly make impact. We laugh at every business we work with. We talk about how can we create a life-lasting impact for individuals. We've spoken with Stephanie with WinHub. We talked about how can we take what we do, because we met Stephanie and Riley at the 8A conference last year where they won. And neither Sam nor Stephanie talked about how Riley won this amazing award. But it just showed me being able to meet these individuals, being able to see people. We talk about relationships. This industry, federal government, is a really big industry on relationships, to building those relationships, talking to people. My team will tell you I don't really do a lot of talking. I kind of am a stay in the background kind of girl, unless it's teaching. If it's teaching, I can sit up there and we can talk all day long. But this kind of stuff is very different for me. And so I'm just truly happy and honored to be here. I hope that anything that I can say, give any type of feedback, wisdom, advice. My biggest thing was I stay with it. At the end of the day, like Miss Vanessa and Stephanie both said earlier, you're going to have those great triumphs and you're going to have those potholes and you're going to figure it out. And having these type of webinars will really help those people that are either starting off or, hey, I tell everybody, you can always learn something new, build a new relationship, go in a new direction. So that's it about me. Thank y'all so very much for being here.
Thank you. This is a wonderful team. I'm so excited about this session. One of the things that I want to talk about is that allied forces. I used that term yesterday. And the reason I call it allied forces is because it is our ability to not only, as you heard from two of our folks, to work with their spouses, but to work with other companies, to work with the community, to really create a company that people are attracted to because it makes a difference. Those allied forces. One of the things that I love about using that term, it means that all of us have our particular gift or purpose. But in order to make that work, we have to join together with others. And that's the power of small businesses, because we accept that we're small and we need each other. And if anything you get out of Lounging with Lily is how these individuals have been able to leverage those relationships. I'm going to start with Stephanie to talk about how WinHub has been able to leverage some of those relationships and what have you.
Sure. So I think for us, it starts with the supreme goal of taking on a small business partner's dream, their mission. You know, it's for a small business owner, it's a very real thing. You know, this is their lifeblood. This is their family's business. This is, you know, perhaps tied or rooted in something that is in their past, you know, that's really meaningful for them. And so for us, it's a lot of teaming up with other visionaries. You know, Sam started this, and I've heard him talk about the day he came home from his federal job and said to his wife, "That's it, I'm quitting, I'm starting my own business." And at that moment, it was very real because it was food on the table for his family. And so that meant that there was the hustle, that was the work hard, that was whatever I'm going to need to do to get the job done. And that wasn't, he couldn't have done that road alone. And so I think this community for him, and, you know, my experience in now working in this place is that it very much is a team sport. You know, this isn't, you're not out here doing it yourself. For WinHub, you know, our ideal is working alongside of a small business that, you know, you understand what you need to do to do work with the federal government. Oftentimes you get an Apex accelerator or a certification that says, okay, here's all the steps that you have to take. And we're here to be the champion, the cheerleader alongside of you to say, okay, let's do a little bit together. Let's start here. What's one task you can do today that puts you one step closer to putting food on the table or to getting that dream? And so, you know, we really do take on the passion of our small business partners because we've been there. We were rooted in that, and it means just as much to us as it does to you. So excited to support you, to cheer for you, to redirect when needed, and to give whatever advice we can.
I love that, Stephanie. And this is why I love Sam and his passion, because it wasn't enough for RELI Group to, I call it, bust out of being a small business in a HUBZone where they're too big to do that. But it was like, how do I turn around and help others to get where I am? It's not about closing the door tightly once we make it through. It's about how do we, you know, create a table where more HUBZones can show up to the table, more women-owned businesses can show up to the table. So I am a fan of WinHub because it's making that table so much larger, and other companies right on this will be able to sit at that table. Now, Vanessa, I know you've had some allied forces discussions. I know at the bash with Guy Timberlake and everything else, some things you shared and what have you. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that, because some of the people on this Zoom really want to know how to work with others better.
Lily, you couldn't have said it better. Allied forces, you know, when you consider that we sell to the military, and you consider that, you know, what does the military do? It protects us, but oftentimes, you know, you're at war. And when you're at war, and I can tell you that running a business sometimes feel like you are at war with yourself and with your bank account and with your kids, just the world in general sometimes feels like it is, you know, just sitting on your shoulders. And so you need allies. And I can tell you from the day we started this business 10 years ago, and again, I have to go back. He's not here because, you know, he's flying, but, you know, my husband truly is a visionary. He understood very quickly. So first of all, he's always the guy that everyone loves in the room, right? And so, you know, he's just that friendly, easy go lucky kind of guy that everybody just likes to, you know, be around. And so immediately we connected with community resources. We connected with, you know, the Florida Minority Export Finance companies in our area and some resources that were offered to us as small businesses. And he made friends quickly. Daisy Ramos at FEFC became a huge mentor for us and guided us in so many ways. And then we connected with the Urban League through somebody else that knew Daisy, who introduced us to Natalie Rosa, who then, and I'm not dropping names because you don't even know these people, but these are just the key people in my mind that I'm thinking, God, they were so instrumental in helping us connect. And, and Lydia, when you consider that we've, sort of connected through Guy Timberlake's classes and the HUBZone conferences that we've all been at, and through Michelle Burnett and all that, and I go, wait a minute, this is huge. It is an absolute network of relationships and connections and people. And when I consider where we are today, it's very simple. My 17-year-old son is in the business, and I tell this story because it is a funny story, guys. So he's 17 and we were desperate. We need, I'm not going to hire people because we just started. And I said, look, I need you to come and put some bids in. And I said, don't talk to anyone, don't call anyone, just, follow this, do the searches online, email them to me and I'll verify. But he's 17 and he's mirror image of me, so he won't listen. And a few days in, I hear him on the phone and I go, who are you talking to? He's like, Mom, I'm on the phone with Sikorsky. It's like, Sikorsky? What are you doing on the phone with Sikorsky? I was looking for a part and they told me to call here, but they don't have it. So now they're going to put me in with this other company. And fast story, make a long story short, he ends up connecting with a young man, an older gentleman on the phone, who he says, I'm young, I'm working part-time, it's COVID, I'm helping my parents. And the guy goes, I'm really impressed with you. I'm going to help you. And this guy started sending him sheets and sheets of bids. And he said, go ahead and bid these. Don't put a high margin. See if you get your foot in the door. And we got our first IDIQ from that guy, from that company, because of that one bid. And then from there, it kept going and we started talking and he started giving us more info. And then he said, I think you guys should go to this conference. It might be good for you. You might meet somebody. And we went to the conference and lo and behold, we met somebody and we connected. And I stalked this man because I knew he was somebody in the business who could help us, who had connections, who knew who to call, who knew who to talk to. And so I kept calling in and I kept saying, hey, Mike, can you help us with this? Or I have a question. I won't bother you. I promise. Just a quick question. And he says, hey, I've got a quote. Go ahead and bid it. See if it comes to something. And I remember it was like a $7,000 little contract. I think we made maybe $500 or something, but it worked. And he says, you want to try another one? And I said, sure. And we tried. And it was it. The business skyrocketed. It skyrocketed. And so our motto is always be in the room, go to those conferences. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who you're going to bump into. This all started because my 17-year-old was, didn't listen to me, go figure, typical kid. But what I learned from that behavior from him was to be fearless, right? And as I was saying earlier, when my husband said, come and help me, I was, scared to death because it was out of my comfort zone, out of my realm, completely different industry than I was used to, technical terms and people that I was uncomfortable with. And I had to get out of my, shell for this. But my 17-year-old taught me to just go for it. And then afterwards, as we met people and we realized all these people from 10 years ago from our local community who connected us. And then we went to these conferences and then we connected with other people and it exploded into like the federal space and a World Wide Web. And I'm going, we couldn't have done this without those connections. So put yourself out there, talk to people and say thank you and say please, and it will work.
Vanessa, Allied Forces, one of the things that I want to just kind of circle around with yours is, first of all, be vulnerable. Be able to say, your son said, hey, I need help. Don't put people in a box because he's 17 years old. Doesn't mean he's not going to make the connection. Just because you're using your grandparents and they're 70 years old, somebody's going to see something in that to say, I'm going to come and help you. One of the things that several of you know is that I'm in the quantum space. And to me, these Allied Forces is all about the concept of entanglement. You just don't know how you're entangling with someone to connect to another place, and to be grateful. I love it, Vanessa. Every contact you make, you need to go back to the person that sent you there to say thank you. That makes a difference. Then they're willing to do more for you because you're grateful. Now, Shereena gets a lot of gratitude from the individuals that she's allowing them to move towards what I call allied forces, sunrise careers versus sunset careers. And I use that terminology because with artificial intelligence, the technology that we see taking place, there are careers that will not be around in the next decade, but there are some careers that are going to maintain their power and get better and better over the next century. And what her habits has done is create new habits in the industry that allow people to have lifelong careers. Tell us about how you're using your allied forces to do just that.
And it's so perfect that how you said that. We definitely decided when it was brought to the table, Shereena, education, training, there's this community. There are these individuals that people have truly kind of given up on. How can we help them really restart their life? And I tell people all the time, because I not only work with seasoned individuals, I also work with schools and high schools, and I talk to students. When your toilet is broken, you don't always fix it. You call a professional, and those are individuals that make their own schedules, they're their own entrepreneur with their skills. And so when we decided to get into the training component, and specifically in the construction training component, was I can give you a brand new start where you can get tools, you can learn, and then you can also grow yourself, and you can start your own business, and you can become your own entrepreneur. And so it's been such a beautiful sight for us to see how we have seen individuals go from our class and then take those skills and go talk to somebody else. It's also something that I've enjoyed doing because I really enjoy working with adults when they have children. I love working with kids, but a lot of these individuals are parents that have really strained relationships due to choices that they have made. And so when I am able to talk to you and give you work tools, but then also tools to be a better human being, how one of the classes that we talk about is a team player, how to be a team player. And it's not just on a work site. Sometimes we have to learn how to have integrity, how to be able to say, I'm sorry. When Vanessa just said, that gratefulness, how to say thank you. When we first went to our very first HUBZone conference, I was terrified out of my mind. I was scared. I was so nervous. I did not want to talk to anybody. I was so scared. Zach had reached out to Michelle Burnett and the HUBZone Council because we were having an issue with our application, and she was able to take care of it. She was like, oh, I'll see y'all at the conference. No, we are not going. And she was like, nope, y'all need to be there. And within this, I would say 16 to 18 months, it went from not knowing anybody to now Zach is now sitting on the HUBZone Council, sitting on panels. I'm able to have conversations with different odds the moves and not feel like so scared. And so it's just something that I've truly enjoyed, where I say, hey, these are opportunities out here. I want to give back to my community. This is how I can give back to these HUBZone communities and give this impact that is not only in a job form, but in a life form. We can provide you with tools and resources in order to really help the community. At the end of the day, it's always about giving back. And so if I can help you find a job and get a job, and it helps you get off the streets, and it helps you be a better person, then you can be a better parent to your kids. For me, I feel like I'm winning at the end of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, what's funny about this call, and I think Stephanie is probably a lot like me, we'll talk to anybody. We get our energy from jumping in the room and talking, where we have the other half, it's like, okay, only if I have to. And when I have to, I'm learning that I can do it really well. So one of the things that I love about even selecting this team to talk about small businesses and how to have that rigor and that vision is that you don't have to be a person that is outgoing. You can be the person that used to be sitting, pressed up against the wall, to now take it on, because your vision will make room for you. Just understand that. One of the things that I liked about what Shereena was saying is that emotional intelligence. How do we infuse that into the next generation? A lot of the things that we do in the small business arena, and particularly in the HUBZone, is change generations to think differently, to allow those seeds to be planted. If they're struggling with their finances, they get to a point where they're no longer struggling with it, and they're sharing those mechanisms with their family members. If they're struggling with their ability to public speak, they share it with their family members. If their accounting systems, all of those things become a powerhouse for us to work with. And that's what becomes very important about allied forces, teaming with individuals that have strengths that maybe you don't have and would like to have. So at that point, I'm going to go to Vanessa. Vanessa, I remember hearing something that you shared about some lessons learned, things that you wouldn't do again, but what you
Yes.
learned from them. Can you give us, because that's the vulnerable part that we talked about, you know, some things that we fell in the pothole.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I should preface this by saying, by the way, that my husband and I have been entrepreneurs for 22 years. So I always say this, you know how you watch a movie and you see an actress pop up and they're everywhere, or an actor or a singer pop up and they're everywhere, and you're like, they just showed up overnight. Then if you Google them, you'll see them in these commercials from 15 years ago, in that little, you know, quick extra spot that they had. You know, I know that person was in that movie, and oh my God, they've been around for so long. You know, I want to preface this by saying that not quitting and having grit and faith is probably the number one ingredient. That, I mean, I have no, as I sit here today and I look at how far we've come and everything, you know, we've accomplished, and, you know, people will say, oh, you guys are successful, you've made it, or whatever. And yeah, you know, that's relative. But I think of all the companies that we've tried, all the things that we failed at. I mean, it's embarrassing if I listed all the things that we've been doing since our 20s. Mike and I have attempted this and tried this in real estate and blah, 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 and all these things. And we just kept failing miserably. And so, of course, when he said, you know, let's try this again, I was like, oh my God. And, you know, again, I would tell you this, Lily, from the questions of the things that I've learned. If you're not a visionary, then attach yourself to a visionary. And if you are a
Amen.
visionary, then attach yourself to someone who's very realistic, and someone who can keep you grounded. I think, you know, partnerships are typically looked at as not a great idea because our partners, you know, we separate or whatever, it didn't work out. But even if it's not a partnership, if you have a vision, then bring in an operations manager that can balance out, you know, your dreams, because it takes work to make those dreams. You gotta, you know, the house looks beautiful, but somebody's got to hammer those nails in, right? But at the same time, if you're that I'm that kind of person. When I ran my business in the past, I was very sort of small about it. I was very scared and uncomfortable because I had been burnt and hurt in the past. And so, as happy as I was to have my own business and run my own business, I was also very uncomfortable with getting out of my comfort zone and, you know, going after, say, luxury, higher end events because I thought they were too big. And my husband was always pushing me, saying, go further, go out there. And so if you are not that big, you know, big vision kind of person, find a mentor, find a partner, find an accountability partner, look for somebody who's going to infuse that in you, right? And so I think that what Mike and I have is unbelievably unique. It's like that unicorn where we learned to work together because we never did. And in the past, we struggled. And the fact that, you know, we are literally the opposite side of the same coin, right? So I'm very grounded, very realistic. I do our numbers. The things that I learned as we were humming along in the last year of our growth was you really needed to know your numbers, right? So my strength in our marriage, relationship, partnership, business is that I'm good with looking at papers and logistics and, you know, working in the mud, let's say. And so, I knew that there were things we were weak in. And again, my husband brings these visions in and I'm like, "Ooh, okay, I'll make them happen." But we were weak in a lot of areas, right? We were weak in knowing our numbers. We were weak in, establishing credit, right? So business credit, learned very early on how to, establish my personal credit, but I didn't know that I should make sure my DUNS profile was completed, not perfectly, but to some degree, put something in there. Because in DUNS, you put your data, what your sales are, and how many employees you have and how long you've been in business. You create that profile. So create the best one that you can. The moment you start working with a company and they tell you, you've got to pay up front, that's fine. Ask them, hey, if I do 1 or 2 orders with you, 3 orders with you, will I qualify for credit after? Will I qualify for terms? That was the way that we approached getting terms, but we didn't realize how important getting terms was, because when you're working with the federal government, if you are not in a service contract, you have to front the money to buy those products to then turn around and sell them. And then the government pays you 30 to 45 days later. So your money's out for that window, that period of time. And how are you managing cash flow and payroll in that time? So, building our credit, it was as easy as asking vendors, and we didn't do that for 6 months. We wasted 6 months. We should have asked our vendors immediately, hey, if we do so many orders with you, will you consider us for terms? Now, here's the other piece of that. If you know, because you have to maintain relationships on both sides. So if you know that you need to get terms from a vendor, when you go out and get a quote from that vendor, maybe you're going to lower your margin a little bit just to win that contract. In the sales world, we call that a loss leader, right? So you start out because you have a means to an end. You have you have some bigger purpose. So you lower your margins, you win the contract, not so much to win the contract as much as to turn around and give your vendor an order. And you know that 2 or 3 orders in, you now qualify for terms. So now if you're qualifying for terms, oh my God, the sky's the limit, okay? So we didn't know how to get credit. It took us 6 months. We didn't know our P&L and our balance sheet. And so when we did apply for credit, they were like, well, where's your paperwork? And we were, ugh. So we were uncomfortable with that. Again, I'm more suited to that than my husband. So I sat down and made that my project. But that was a tough situation for us. And I would tell you the last thing that I learned also as an entrepreneur is know your employees. One of the things that we struggled with is particularly during COVID, when it was hard to find help, anybody that was willing to work at that point, we'd bring in, right? But within 2 or 3 months, we could tell that that person was not a good fit. It wasn't going to stick. But we were so scared of, well, we don't have an employee, we're going to have to do all the work ourselves, that we just kind of held on. We just, we kept forcing the issue. We kept training that person. And, fine, we made it to 9, 10, 11 months, whatever. We trained them to a passable level. And then that person wasn't very happy because it wasn't a good fit. So guess what? 11 months later, they quit. And so all that time that we spent pouring into that person, it wasn't a waste, because I got better as a trainer, as a manager, and as a business owner. So it was a lesson learned. But at the same time, it wasn't the best use of my time, right? And it wasn't the best time. It wasn't the best use of that person's time. And so what we learned, in that growth was, okay, next time, if we know within a month or 2 that this is just not a good fit, cut the ties. Let's move on. We'll survive. We'll figure it out. It's better to suffer for a month or 2 than to drag it out for 11 months. And then guess what? The person quits and I got to start all over again. So now I'm suffering for 14 months. Huh?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things Vanessa talked about just now is that ability to hire slow, but fire fast. That ability to make those hard decisions, because guess what? We're not doing the employee a service by keeping them on in a position they don't fit. Also, she talked about the accounting systems and what is needed, because if you're not making money, you're going under. You got to make some money. Now, Stephanie, I would like to kind of turn it over to Stephanie, because those lessons learned by Sam at RELI Corporation is kind of how the vision and mission was set up for WinHub, because they looked at some of those challenges Vanessa has been having and said, how do we get people up to speed quickly in a safe environment? Stephanie, can you tell us about that?
Sure, but I was actually in the chat about to drop this little nugget. So before I forget, the hire slow or fire fast, the little nugget you gave, there's a great book called Radical Candor. If you've never read it, that book changed a lot for me professionally, but the author talks a lot about the strength of giving feedback and making some of those decisions early rather than late, and how it sets you as a business owner, a manager up for success while also supporting the person you're giving that feedback to. So if you are a reader or looking for some good professional nuggets, that's a great place to find some. Your question, Lily, about, how WinHub might support businesses in that place, I think what Sam realized was that in an ideal world, yeah, you have the budget, you have the overhead to hire an HR expert, a contracts expert, a finance expert, all of these experts, but it was the barrier to doing that. And so where do you invest your time, your dollars to help get you the supports that you need immediately to win a contract, to support a contract you already have? And then where can you buckle down and make do? And so one of the things that I've heard from our current clients related to WinHub is that with WinHub, there's no overhead expense. And so there's a lot of these allied forces partners out there that are willing to give you business strategy, business advice as a competitor, a friend of me, however you want to talk about it in the industry, to support the growth as a whole. But then there's some other creative ways to get that support with a really low cost. And so whether that is finding places to outsource your work to WinHub or other outsourced partners, who can help you doing the day-to-day functions so that you can put your time and attention on the big things that need it. For WinHub, shameless plug here for being in the room, but for WinHub, it's a pay by the drink model. It's not a long-term contract. It's not a retainer that you would find with other agency partners. It's, hey, I need help writing a capability statement. Here's what I know I do well, help me tell that story. Or I need help setting up our back office finance, so that as we're creating contracts and building our finance, that it's compliant with the requirements of the federal government. So look for those partners that can help you do that, whether it's finding a resource that you can hire and invest in now, or thinking creatively about how you might also meet those needs.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Now, Shereena, I know that you've had some fun lessons learned as you've gone into this training model in order to, I call it sunrise careers. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. We've things that I have learned, and then as a business. I think I talked about it briefly when we were just getting on the call, is working in this federal government industry, HUBZone communities, flexibility, adaptability, creativity, transparency, honesty, being able to be humble and ask for help when you need it. Those are some of the really important lessons that I think our business has really learned how to thrive. Partnering with companies that share that same vision. And so we partnered with the Urban League, homeless shelters. We have a partnership right now with Own Practice. They are working on mental health for veterans. And so partnering people with that have the same vision, same passion, has allowed us to really grow. But being able to know when to kind of pull back on that partnership, being able to know when is this a good partnership, that's very important in the lesson that we've learned. I have learned how to really allow people to be their authentic selves and to help them grow. When you are working with humans or adults, it's different than working with children. And so allowing them to let me know where they're coming from has allowed me to become a better educator, better trainer for them. With the H.A.B.I.T.S Group, we have, there are 4 of us main individuals here, and how we all take our components. So Zach, as our president and CEO, he's that visionary. He casts that great, wide, large net. Myself and Mr. Burnside, who does our health and social action, him and I kind of reel him back in. Mr. Ray, who's our senior VP, he does a little bit of the bouncing back. So everybody's been able to take our talents and our gifts and share them with the communities and help people understand, because I've learned that how you communicate with people is how they receive you. And so when I am talking to individuals that have troubled past, or moms, or veteran women, they may relate to me more. And I have to respect that. And I have to understand that it's not a personal attack on me. But that took me a little bit of time to understand. Why don't you want to communicate and open up with me when I'm working with you? But it's just something that I've had to learn in one of our struggles. And I think, honestly, as we continue to build and grow, creating those relationships, being honest, letting people know. We sat on a panel talking about financial assistance and how finances, and then we were like, yeah, we need financial assistance. And people are like, y'all really do? And so really having to be honest and open and saying, this is where we are. And then taking feedback and not taking it personally. I think that's so important, is when somebody says, oh, your capability statement is a little too busy. Let's trim it down. Okay. Oh, all right. What do you mean by that? Can you give me an example of that? Because in our mind, you work so hard, like Stephanie said, you work so hard on creating this capability statement and creating this content. And for somebody to be like, oh, this is too much, this is too busy, it can kind of get personal. So really being able to move emotions aside, but being open to feedback, hearing that feedback, giving that feedback much earlier, asking those questions. Try not to let, if you're at a conference and you kind of don't understand or how this person can maybe help you, ask that question. How can we benefit? How can we partner together to really be successful and win? How can we, because I know in some people's, oh my gosh, I got to keep it all here. In my mind, I'm like, if you are an expert at this, let me give you the opportunity to shine your light. And I'll do my, kind of stay in my lane. I think it's very important. And so working together, partnering people, those are some of the big things where I'm like, we can't do it all. Accounting is not our bread and butter, you guys. We're going to mess up with numbers. We need to get that accounting firm together. But being able to be vulnerable and say that honestly, and not feel like I'm failing, just really knowing like, okay, if I truly want myself to be successful, or we want this company to be successful, we have to look at the good and the bad and the ugly, and be able to make changes and make notes. And I think COVID helped, but also hurt, because you have to learn how to get back out there with people. How do I communicate with people? We emails and Zooms were so pivotal now, but now when you're in person, it's like, hey, how do we remember how to have a conversation, and let's talk, and how do we do this? So I think for me, I've learned just how to be transparent and be honest and open and vulnerable with businesses, and letting them know what our desire and what we want to see accomplished. And I think you as a person will be able to know if this is a good fit for you at the end of the day. And even if you don't partner, and Stephanie, I'll brag on you, like we've met with WinHub. We just weren't in a position to hire WinHub, but it didn't start our relationship. And so I think that's important to remember. It's just, even though we may not have, like, we're not out there bringing in millions of dollars, Stephanie knows once that opportunity comes, that's who we're going to call, because of the relationship that we've been able to maintain and build. So I think just keep on the path, reach out, ask for help, seek guidance, get that mentor, and just, trust in yourself that you have the plan. But if you have to adjust, just know that that might be the best when you're listening to these people talk.
Thank you so very much. One of the things that I want to kind of summarize as we come to a close, Shereena said, to me, it's be naked and not ashamed, because in that place of us not being ashamed and naked, we find partners that are real and are connected to us. Not everybody we meet is supposed to be that close partner. Some are on in a different village, but we can connect with them later. So there are people that we're going to want to be close in our village, and others we've met, and it's nice, but then they're people we may refer others to. One of the reasons why we spent that time dealing with the workplace, the employee, is because we're coming out of the Great Recession. not only are small businesses having challenges getting qualified individuals, but large businesses too. So being able to have that skill set that attracts individuals to your small business is going to be critical for your growth and your trajectory for the future. So be able to be straightforward in what you need and what you want. As I close, I want to thank all my guests. Oh, they gave their heart, they shared everything. We're going to have information sent out to you from what WinHub does. Vanessa and her team, you know, Shereena and their team. These are people that believe in sharing. So I'm excited about how in the future you can reach out to them directly and find out how you can partner with them. I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Trailblazer. It's the National HUBZone magazine. And we have probably a couple of dozen editions that talk about individuals, much like the ones that are on the line now and the successes they've had. As you look at the next slide, you'll notice that there are some support. Once again, if you are a HUBZone company, these are hot links that you can go to and find out more about the National HUBZone Council, how we can support you, how we can partner, and some strategic ideas for developing your business, not only business development, contracting, and such. Now, that next slide allows you to see those links from the Small Business Administration, ones that you can directly click on and find out more information about how to become certified, whether it is a women-owned business, a HUBZone, just an 8A, whatever it is, you can find out more about that. I think that's the last slide, Ms. Blunt. Oh, there's one more for quick links. But I want to just let you know that we really have enjoyed our time together. Feel free to reach out to these talented individuals. They've said some fabulous things. You know, Stephanie has that book that you're probably going to want to be able to read very quickly in order to make sure your game is good. You know, as a friend of mine says, leveling up is so important in business today. As I give that last 60 seconds, any words of wisdom you want to leave with, 3 to 4 words, Shereena, Vanessa, or Stephanie?
I would
Don't
just
quit.
say, see it through.
That's
Okay.
right. Don't quit. See it through. Just hang in there.
And
It
I would
will
say,
work out.
I'd say lean into the power of being new, being a beginner. If you've got questions, ask them. If you need help, ask for it. There's an amazing community represented by so many folks in this room. Take advantage of that.
And I will leave you with the word lean in. Have a blessed week. Thank you for attending this meeting. It has been fabulous. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the future. God bless you all.
Thank you. God bless you
Thank
all.
you,
Again,
Lily.
Bye.
Thank you for everything.
and the send out will be ready within 1 to 2 weeks. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Shereena. And thank you, Sam, wherever you may be.